nobody teaches us how to build relationship, even though we communicate with people every day, right? It just doesn't make sense. And nobody teaches us about a brand and why we should, or even we don't have a privilege not to manage our brand and our network. And it's not included in so many business or in most business schools, but that's as almost as equal as knowing your job is about knowing how to connect and communicate with people. And that's the paradox that it's kind of my mission in the world also to help people do better. And with that in mind, I have a question for you. There is a say by a businesswoman called Hannah Rado, and she said that modesty is not practical. What do you think about that?
Hi, I'm Rosie Zilinskas, creator of The Articulation Gap. And I have one word for you, networking. When somebody says the word networking, what is your gut reaction? If you cringe just a little bit, like I did, then this episode is for you. Here is the thing. You may be at your desk doing excellent work, and the opportunities keep going to the people who know people, right? And no, the answer is not about becoming one of those fake, sneaky, spammy people at all. My guest, Lirone Glikman, is the founder of Human Factor, and she is the author of the Super Connectors Playbook. She has taught authentic relationship building in 27 countries, and her big idea stopped me. The gap between you and the career you want, you would think it's the work, but it's not. It's the people. Nobody ever taught us this skill. Today, we start learning that skill. So let's get into it. One of the things that I've noticed as an entrepreneur, people are reaching out to me and they're doing it very inauthentic and very sneakily. Somebody actually sent me a message saying, hey, I really liked your post. Can you tell me more about your products that you offer? And so I said, well, thank you for liking my post. Which post was it? And what products are you interested in? And then they came back and said, well, really, I wanted to offer you a program. And to me, Lirone, that is so inauthentic. I would rather you come to me and be like, you know what? I have this program. Do you want to buy it? Instead of, hey, I saw the post. I really liked it. So first of all, I want to ask you, can you kind of take us back to the moment that you realized that power of just genuine and authentic relationship building, and how, or I should say, how and why did it change your life? So let's start there.
Great. So thanks for this intro. And I definitely feel you about what you said on LinkedIn. So essentially, growing up, I was always, I would say, very ambitious. I always had a lot of dreams for myself, for my life. I remember I wanted to be in the circus, and then, little girl. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't know anyone in the circus. How could I ever get there? And I remember true story, I wanted to work for NASA. And when I was in the 4th grade, my mom helped me craft a message in English, and we sent it to NASA. And it took them maybe 4 months to answer back, and then sending a snail mail. And I'm like, oh my God, like it took them so long. How could I ever really be able to like, I mean, a thought of a little girl was, I want to achieve there. I want to get there. How can I get there? And I remember growing up, again, having this global dream. Like my father is a retired airline pilot. So I had a taste of the world from a very young age. And I was always fascinated with people. And I said, how can I achieve this dream if I just don't know anyone? So I felt an enormous frustration growing up, because I kind of maybe realized in some ways that the gap between me and living the life that I want, achieving the job that I want, getting to places that I want to be at, actually the gap is about the people. So this was kind of an early realization. And I was always a friendly person. And maybe again, what I'm about to say would resonate with a lot of women. I was always a friendly person, but something wasn't there. I mean, I wasn't the most popular girl, or I was too pleasing or too nice and later I started to observe people and see, wait, why some people get to know about the best parties, or why some people get like job offers or invited for lunches all the time. So I started to observe, and with that also adapt how I bring myself to any situation. And maybe the moment I actually realized that I know how to connect authentically and get to where I want, was when I moved by myself to Sydney, Australia at the age of 21. I didn't know anyone, like three people, but they didn't really know anyone as well. And I met this someone on the street that I actually worked in radio station beforehand since I was 16. And I told him I'm looking to meet people in my field in radio and marketing. And he connected me to this radio manager in Sydney, Bondi Beach. And the manager said something I would never forget. He said, you know something, your English sucks, but I like your vibe and I'm going to give you a show. And he gave me a show with really, really, really bad English, like radio.
Wow.
And then after a month, I got to work for the biggest corporate in Australia, Westfield Shopping Center, helping marketing operation. So, I mean, it was started in frustration, but then looking back after doing this in Australia, I'm like, oh my God, I figured out something. So this is how I discovered my powers.
That is so awesome. I love that you can even like go all the way back to when you were like in fourth grade and you're like frustrated because NASA's not responding immediately because of the snail mail. But
Yeah.
I also like the fact that by 21, you were like, wait a minute, I have something here, because most people are like just trying to figure out what the heck is going on in the world, let alone themselves when they're
Yeah.
21. So one of the things that I'm super passionate about is teaching women and empowering women how to advocate for themselves in the workplace. And so many women are working hard and they have really tremendous accomplishments that they have added to the corporation, but they're not necessarily able to figure out how to make those connections at work so that they can be recognized, and there could be people that are advocating for themselves when they're not there, getting advocates and sponsors and stuff like that. So what would you say to that woman in the corporate world that is like sitting at her desk and, you know, frustrated because she's not getting those opportunities as far as connecting with people at work?
Wow. So I have so many things to say about it, but our time, is limited. So I'll try to just be very specific. First of all, let's start with the personal brand and how you bring yourself in the workforce, in the workplace. Many times, and I'm generalizing, but we know it's true, women feel uncomfortable putting themselves out there and owning what they feel and want to say, and really feel uncomfortable express themselves. I know there are different, it could be about personality and maybe how high they are in the management and even against society. But the best way to present what you do and share your thoughts is actually when you base it on facts, on actions, and actually and data. So if now I'm at a meeting and I disagree with the manager because he said something, I can go back to the facts. Hey, last month when me and my team, when we did something, the answer was, the result were XYZ. Or look at the data, see, like data doesn't lie. Or action, we did so much work, so the result was X, but still we learned Y. Data, actions, and sorry, I have a brain fog. So so data, actions, and facts, basically. So that's one thing.
Okay.
That could help women to really bring themselves better in the workforce. And even like happened to me, if you forget stuff, that's okay. Not the end of the world.
Absolutely.
It's 9 p.m. here, so I have a good.
No worries. Lirone, you said all of that is part of like the personal branding, right?
Yeah.
And I know you have an amazing book, and I would like to go through your 6 pillars in the framework. But before we get to that, when you say personal branding, that could mean so many different things to different people. So what do you mean when you say personal branding?
Okay, thank you for asking this. We all brand basically is how we bring ourselves. And I like to say that it's the promise that we bring to those we communicate with. So when you communicate with me, you know that I will probably share an interesting stories, that I will smile, that I will have high energy, because every time you communicate with me, I'm consistent with that. So a brand essentially is the consistent messages, values that we express in different ways, and that's what people know us for. How do we design a brand or change a brand? We just share different messages consistently. So many times I had this, like I ask when I run workshops, I ask people to write 2 strengths, the main 2 strengths that they bring to the workforce. And one time this guy said his 2 strengths was that he has a really good sense of humor and that he's assertive. And I told him, look, I see that you have a really good sense of humor. But do you think people understand and people see that you're assertive? He's like, you know what? No. And then when we realized the gap, we started to think, okay, what actions, words, and actually things you can do and say to consistently to shape your brand and shape how you're being perceived so people will see you as more assertive. So that's the whole idea. Understand what do you want to bring out there and find the gap and then see how you bring it as part of who you are. I mean, also it's about being who you are because he is assertive inside him. It's just now know how to express it better in the right moments at work. So I hope it kind of gives you a framework of how I see a personal brand. So it's your strength. And again, you won't bring the same strength to when you're with your kids at lunch, for example.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah, I love,
being aware of that. Yeah.
yeah, that's really good. What I think, what you said that I think is so valuable is knowing how to explain to somebody else how you can help them, in a variety of ways. You didn't say it in those specific words, but when you are literally showing people how you can help them solve their problems through your knowledge and your skills and your strengths, that's when I think you can actually start creating that personal brand. So I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your book. How did your book develop? And then we're going to go into your framework.
Okay, so the book actually developed. It started back then in Sydney, Australia. Like later, I understood that I was able to achieve a very significant result by, arriving to a very foreign country, not knowing anyone, and getting to the biggest corporate. And I realized that maybe I figured out something, but nobody actually teaches us how to achieve our goals. And the best way, as I said, for me is through people. So I researched and interviewed some of the leaders in the world of business networking, including Dr. Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, and many others. And I developed this framework. To date, I taught it in the last 12 years in 27 countries around the world. This is the Super Connectors Playbook. It's an Amazon bestseller. And it essentially in the past decade, I developed a framework, and the interesting thing about it that it's really relevant for any type of goal, I would say. If you want to find a job, if you want to go up in the corporate ladder and get more connections and support in your company, and if you're looking for clients. So that's about kind of how it came about. And in terms of the framework, that it has 6 pillars. And first of all, it's about understanding that if you want to achieve our goals, we have to first of all be authentic, because it only works when it's real. Looking back again, you said about this message on LinkedIn, it wasn't authentic. It would not last, and it's okay to be strategic. And for women, many times we feel uncomfortable to ask and be strategy, or as you said, networking can feel like very like, hey, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be fake. I don't want to be, to like take advantage of people, but it's not at all. It's not it's even not the same, phrase or world. It's really about who would be the people that you would be more like most happy of like to help. Like, who would you prefer helping the most?
I like that because, like you said, that person that reached out to me on LinkedIn, and you know what? I don't generally respond to things like that, but I actually did send a message to that person saying, you know what? I totally get it. You're an entrepreneur. You're in it for the business, but the way you reached out to me is very inauthentic. And I literally use that word because it's kind of like bait and switch. Like you're pretending to like my post and wanting, information about my business to sell me something. And to me, that's just not a good way to do that. So the first one is authentic. All right.
In terms of the framework, no, yeah.
Well, in terms of the framework, yes. Yeah. But when you say authentic, does that mean just kind of be yourself, be natural? What if, and this is kind of where people get stuck, what if someone is really shy and they don't know how to be authentic? What would you say then?
Okay, so I'll just put it in place. First of all, I'll share the framework, because authenticity is actually the foundation. It's even before the framework. Okay. You want to be authentic. And I agree with you. Authenticity is a very big word. People use it just because they use it. But for me, when I say authenticity, I believe that it's about aligning and approving your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So when you're congruent, when you're aligned with like your thoughts, your words, your actions, then you feel, like you're whole, you're not fake, you're really much centered to what it is means for you to be you. And then with that in mind, the framework says that in order to achieve your goal, you kind of go through 6 pillars. It's not always linear in real life. So I'll go through the pillars and then I'll kind of drill down and explain each. So first of all, it's about understanding what is your goal if you want to achieve goals through relationship building. Then it's about what I like to call people plan. Then build a brand, a personal brand. Then connect, make this good rapport and connection, maintaining relationships and leveraging them for results. So now I'll go back, and goal is, of course, understand what you want, small or big. You want to find a new job. You want to even, buy a new car, get a girlfriend, but mostly in the, let's say, workplace. You want to solve a very big problem and you need other people help. People plan is same as we have business plan and marketing plan. Why don't we have people plan? And it's about the people that we already know, kind of map and acknowledge and see the people that are around us, that many times we don't see them as those who can actually help us. And also create new networks, like going to networking events or meeting with friends or so on. Then once we approach, especially new people, the first thing they would do is to try to understand who are we and go and Google us or check our LinkedIn. So you want to make sure your brand is congruent and shares the right messages of who you are online and also face to face. I mean, like those apps, if someone is like looking some way in, like, let's say dating app, and then you meet him in real life, like, okay, I wouldn't date this, so you wouldn't do business with the same person. So we had goals, we had people plan, we had personal brand, then connecting, breaking the ice, creating a rapport with the person you just met, then the working and the word networking, maintaining the relationship, and finally leveraging for results. Is not about persuading or being fake. If you know something, if you like them, if you trust them, if they probably would want to help you and you would want to help them. So once you get to the leverage part, you, for the most part, actually build a good foundation for a relationship for people to want to help you. Now, each of this part has a lot of practical knowledge. I also share in the book AI tips. There are also training exercises to make it as practical, but also to help each person to adapt it to who they are.
I like the framework. Obviously, starting with goals is always better. I think the last two, the maintaining and then leveraging, those are awesome because a lot of times we just have, we add someone to our, network, whether it's on LinkedIn, let's just say like our LinkedIn. Well, okay, great. Happy to connect, great to meet you. And then it's like nothing. And it's so interesting because there's very few people that I know that know everybody in their network, like personally, like they've had some kind of conversation. And obviously it's impossible to get to know everybody. So
True.
when you are discerning those connections and those relationships, Lirone, how do you decide who you're going to spend time with? Because again, when, so many people are wanting to connect with you, or how do you, as a corporate employee, how do you decide who you want to connect with? And I know you talked about the people plan, but tell us a little bit more about that.
So in terms of planning or in terms of maintaining relationship, or both? We can touch.
Well, first of all, let's go with, how do you even know who to approach first?
Okay. So I always look at it at like different circles. I mean, there are the people that are specifically, that I assume could help me achieve a goal. But also there are other people around me. And again, I'm a people person. So many times, I meet people because I would love to learn from them. I like them. I enjoy around them. And also, some of them can also help me. So it's not black and white for once. Secondly, let's say, and I also coach a lot of like corporate employees. And many times there was this girl, she was in charge of audit in her company. And each month she had to go to other departments and ask them for some data. And she said they were just so annoying. And they were always late. And then I told her, let's do it in a different way. Next time on lunch, during lunchtime, go and sit with them, or even just bring a cake, or if you have anything, just go and say hi, or offer them some, I don't know, candies or whatever. Just spend some time, even put it in the calendar without them knowing, and just nourishing the relationship and just giving something, sharing a nice word. So basically the idea is to create another form of relationship, because right now their exchange is, hey, I need something from you. Hey, you don't give it to me. Try to create a new experiences between you two that are in different channels and different type of communication. And once she did it, they became, more friendly, and work was like that. So it's about building another type of relationship, not only transactional, but also emotional. And I will even say that research from the College School at Tel Aviv University, they researched for about 20 years employees in law firms and consulting and accounting firms, and they realized that if at work, if you create two types of relationships, instrumental, like helping in work, and also emotional, you have people that you can open up with, you actually increase your life expectancy in about 4 years. So actually having good relationship with different people at work actually can make your, life longer. So
I really like that. I like that a lot because, I saw a post this morning on LinkedIn, and this woman was doing a workshop to leaders, and some of the leaders were complaining that they were like, well, I'm not a therapist. I don't want to know about what people's problems are. And they were a little combative, and the presenter was like, well, why are you in leadership then anyway? It's like, and so it was a really good comeback. But a lot of times I feel that leaders want robots, and they just want, these little machines outputting work, but they forget that they're dealing with human beings. Human beings have problems. And, throughout my 32-year career, we saw employees that were always performing at a very high level. And then all of a sudden they weren't performing so well. And instead of accusing them, we were asking questions like, what's going on? Is everything okay? Because we are people. So I like that they did that distinction. It increases your life expectancy by 4 years. So that's incredible. I want to kind of go back and re-ask you my question about the shyness, because a lot of times people just don't want to be visible. And I know it's kind of part of the personal brand, but what could someone that feels very shy, and there's that known word like, I'm an introvert, I don't want to be out there, I don't want to be visible. So how can people like that work on their personal brand when they feel very uncomfortable putting themselves out there?
So first of all, and again, it relates to what you just said earlier, nobody teaches us how to build relationship, even though we communicate with people every day, right? It just doesn't make sense. And nobody teaches us about a brand and why we should, or even we don't have a privilege not to manage our brand and our network. And it's not included in so many business, or in most business schools, but that's almost as equal as knowing your job is about knowing how to connect and communicate with people. And that's the paradox, that it's kind of my mission in the world also to help people do better. And with that in mind, I have a question for you. There is a say by a businesswoman called Hannah Rado, and she said that modesty is not practical. What do you think about that? Before I'll answer the question, I'm getting there.
I really like that, because when I think of someone that's modest, they're like, oh, well, I don't want to make a big deal about the work that I do. I don't want to really speak up about myself. I don't want to call attention to me. And I love that quote, because that is not serving you. So yeah, let's talk about modesty.
Okay. So modesty, I always, in many times in my workshops, I raise this sentence, and we start a discussion about it. And sometimes people say, yeah, but I mean, I brought up as, I think modesty is such a beautiful thing. Like, why you don't need to put yourself out there? And other people said, hey, but if I won't say what I think, or if I won't say that I did it, then someone else will get the credit or get the raise, or worse. I mean, I won't be, acknowledged for the basic things that I'm doing. And eventually, like in many things in life, it's about a scale, and you need to know how to be flexible and when to raise your voice in like a professional manner and stand for yourself and own what you did and share it as it is. And when to say, okay, now I can, be more quiet and be the modest part. And I think it's very important to think about this notion and think of different circumstances or situation at work and business, and where modesty actually holds me back from getting more money or getting more results, or when modesty is really what I should practice. So look at it as kind of something that you can play with. And you talked about extroverted people and introverted people. And, I think there is kind of an idea that extroverted people are better because you hear them, you see them, they take, all the attention, they usually bring the energy and the vibe to events, they're loud, they make stories, they're out there. But, and this is great, and we need them, and they're awesome, and I'm kind of in the middle sometimes. I'm probably more extroverted than not. But the introverted people, they actually have one of the most amazing connecting skills ever. They know how to listen because they're more introverted, they usually go to a room, they start to observe, and they know how to analyze situation and people for the most part because they're always observing. And then when they listen to you, they usually ask questions. And same as here, when you ask a question, you manage the conversation, you're guiding the conversation. When you listen to someone, when you're interested in someone, as Dale Carnegie said, they become interested, you become more interesting. And so they're giving the extroverted people the gift of, like, I see you, I hear you. And that also creates bonds. So knowing how to listen and how to ask questions and finding a true interest in others is such a great way to connect with people authentically.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know if you have heard some anecdotes about people that are interviewing
Yeah.
that go to interviews and they bring their parent with.
No, not sure.
Yeah, it's
What are the rates of success? Maybe I should bring my
Yeah.
father next time.
No, I am thinking
Yeah.
about that because a lot of times, especially in this day and age where, you have so many different generations working, in the corporation. And I just recently heard it again where, there's been documented situations where someone that
Yeah.
is interviewing, they actually bring their parent to the interview. And, that's kind of a twofold situation where the parents are doing a disservice to their, adult child, by enabling them and coming to the interview. And then, of course, the child, like, bringing their parent. And then again, like, I don't know if you have any experience with like the younger generation and how they are building relationships, because a lot of that has really dissolved in a lot of ways, like with the really young generations, people that are either in college, coming out of college into the workforce, and then we just expect them to know how to relate to people in the corporate world. So what are your thoughts with younger generations learning? Because to your point, we've never, like, it's not like we have a college course, saying, okay, we're going to relationship build or we're going to network. But have you talked to any young people and how are they feeling and how are they being able to build relationships?
So I'm really happy and honored to speak at leading universities for students, even for high school. I work with a high school also in Maryland. And it's very interesting. On the one hand, the younger generation is so smart and is so amazing with technology. And on the other hand, as you know, I mean, they don't have the foundation that we have, that we know how to communicate before technology. And what I found on the one hand is really understanding how to have an independent thinking, critical thinking, how to read someone, how to read a situation. And for that, I would say that many can learn it from their parents, or again, depends on the school and environment, which is so important to shaping who we are. And I really think that as AI, become more and more prominent in our lives, it's good and bad for the younger generation because they can really use it and ask questions of what should I say to this girl. I hear so many people using it as a psychologist and how to deal with again interpersonal skills now. This actually helps them to find the solutions on how to react and what to do, and that might be even good in some way. But I definitely fear that the next generation will aim to shape a world which is less connected. And because we're still here, then this is our mission to show them, even through emotion or through, again, actions and teaching, and just guide them to shape a better connected world. And especially maybe I would say in an organization, then organizations like a microcosmos, because they have their own culture. So once the elderly kind of, or the older, like senior, manage or to mentor them better, then maybe they could shape the culture better.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I'm also learning a lot from like a lot younger
Yeah.
people that are doing AI, that are doing, they're out there doing videos and stuff like that. So we can always learn from the younger people. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting because this whole topic of relationships, you can spend like an entire week just kind of
12 years and still going.
and so,
True. So
how do you primarily educate these various
mm.
groups of people? Like how do they connect with you? Tell us a little bit about the work that you're actually doing now.
So essentially, I have different workshops that I teach around the world on how to basically find a job through relationship building. Mostly universities, for example, they invite me either for their career or entrepreneurship programs or schools. So I either help them to see how they can find job through building their network, or how to find clients and investors for their startups if they're in the entrepreneurship aspect. I also do one-on-one. I build brands mostly for startup founders. So I also own an agency to basically not only help them to communicate on LinkedIn, but also get them to the media. And once you have a brand, as we said, especially when you own a company, that actually helps. They say that, I mean, it helps you get more clients, create an unfair advantage. And also, again, it applies if you're in an organization and you have your own brand. So this is kind of my world, helping build a brand, building a good network that is actually authentic and supportive. I'm running book tours. I have a lot of content online. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'm very happy and driven to do more, especially in an AI enabled world. Yeah.
All right. Lirone, well, thank you so much for all of your time. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank
I
you so
think
much, Rosie.
the biggest takeaway for me, again, is that maintaining and leveraging the connections that you have, because a lot of times we just leave those connections on autopilot, and we really
Yeah.
need to be maintaining and leveraging, like you said. So thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Rosie. I appreciate it.
It just floors me when I think of young people entering the workforce and just being expected to know how to manage their careers. The thing is, nobody teaches us how to build relationships effectively. We communicate with people every single day, and nobody ever taught us how to actually have a conversation. So if networking has always felt awkward or fake to you, this is not a character flaw. There's just a missing knowledge piece for you, and that is the networking component that Lirone teaches. So here is your homework straight from Lirone. Pick one person at work this week, not to ask for anything, just to build a relationship, build conversation, and do this before you need it. Have coffee, have lunch, but a real conversation is the goal. Transactional conversations get you answers. Emotional conversations get you an advocate. And remember that your results do not speak for themselves. When you speak with impact, people carry your impact into those rooms that you are not. And if putting that impact into words is hard for you, then I've got you. Grab my free Impact Clarity Coach. The link to that is going to be in the show notes, as well as Lirone's contact information. I'm Rosie Zilinskas, creator of The Articulation Gap. Remember, be brave, be bold, and take action.